While I'm not the biggest fan of assault mechs, I do see their uses, so we're going to go ahead and pitch them into the fight and see what we can do with them. And do something else, actually. In this skirmish, the Tarians are flying into the field with 2 Thunderbolt fighters with some light assets to back up a clan assault force, backing in almost 10k BV by themselves. And for the word of Blake, we got us 2 Stalkers and a Reaver, and we have an eclectic variety of stuff broken out of the museum, courtesy of Rorvik's Raiders, and also some more mercenaries, care of our buddy Memphis Mark. Now our strategy is to not engage the clan into this killing field out here. We will not engage them in the open because that will be a disaster. We will be playing to their game. So we are going to try to focus them and herd them into that cluster of woods and buildings over there and try to lay some Thunderbolt minefields from the bushwhackers to keep them from engaging us in the open. Now, in order to keep this gambit in check, we go ahead and start moving the assault units forward first, and we're going to allow the lighter units moving out onto the side to skirmish out there, but generally we will not want to engage the clan if we can avoid it. They respond in kind by putting the Peripheran Tarian forces out there, and we go ahead and use that as our impetus to continually put the slower assets to move up towards the city while the bushwhackers take the field in the open. And if you can tell, we're using the card initiative system. Again, I would suggest anybody else try it at least once because we found it actually helps moving large formations a lot. And as their movement finishes up, the clan have placed themselves heavy along the center to engage the Interseer forces along the center of the board. They do not want those LRM carriers, the 2 Stalkers, the Trench Bucket, and the Dervish, I do believe, to be able to deliver their fire support without any kind of discretion. So we start laying down the fast cam minefields along the center to keep them from being able to engage the other assets and try to at least outmaneuver us. So some of the minefields hit, some of the minefields deviate and splash out there a little bit further out. We're using the map hex tile sets to proxy that, and they're fairly light fields, but we're going to hit it over and over again to help thicken it up to keep them from heading over in our direction. Again, most of the equipment that is going to be moving up the center is intro tech, so we got to get close and we got to start alpha striking. The Tarians moved a lot of their light assets out there into the open. They're going to engage the light assets from the inner sphere. We currently outnumber them, but we hope to make equitable trades. In the air above, the Reaver swings in, losing initiative, and ends up getting tagged at long range from one of the Thunderbolt fighters, and the Reaver is not able to return in kind. It is a foul blow, but the Reaver shakes it off with that awesome armor that it has. The Blood Asp for the Coalition begins moving forward, hits the minefield, manages to take just a couple of points to it, and gives the clan player quite a bit of concern to actually move through any of the minefields in the future. He begins swinging wide around the woods, beginning to engage the heavy assets that are out there on the northern end. The Vulture moves out there, the Ryukin begins moving in that direction, and we begin pouring all our heavy assets again, trying to escort the Stalkers in there so that they can do what they do best with all their medium laser spam and SRM spam at close range. We can't really afford to do any sort of extra damage at long range. 2 LRM-10s really isn't all that great, but we're going to be using them as an artillery boat as much as we can. The Assassin swings away from the light elements out there in the open field for the word of Blake and moves into the city, trying to duck and cover so that he might have another turn. Cicada does as well, swinging wide out into the clan or Tarian lines and tries to keep the flank open. Raven moves in right behind him to keep his back clear as they begin engaging the clan and Tarian forces. Coalition Mad Cat responds in kind, getting pretty aggressive, while the Toro for the Tarians begins moving back away. We start moving the rest of our units up, and we begin committing ourselves again with the Bushwhackers up the center. And as the bushwhackers move forward, we begin deploying more minefields. We want to at least make a little bit of a headache for that vulture as it gets closer, so we start deploying the minefields at range into that little open area out there. We're trying to just slow them down. It manages to land in the hex with the vulture, but the rules are such that if it gets delivered into the hex in which the unit is active in, he can still move out of it and not activate the mines, which is kind of sad. We were kind of hoping to hurt it. Clan Coalition forces continue moving their way up the middle through the woods and towards the city, hoping to make their presence felt. A lot of shots swing and completely miss on both sides. Mad Cat is in the woods on the southern end and is redoubting the light assets out there that are harrying it and getting closer. Again, no equitable damage is really traded between them, while the Tarian forces are still falling back. And I can't really emphasize this anymore. There's a lot of shots going on, and a lot of them are like 8+ or so, 8, 9+, but they're all missing. The only thing that managed to really hit this turn was the fast cam munitions, deploying the minefield up in the center. Didn't really stop anything though. So far it's working for the Word of Blake forces, as the Coalition forces are stunted. They got minefields on the left, minefields on the right, assault mechs sitting in the city waiting to take them on, and they are trying to get their maneuver game running, but they can't quite. And meanwhile, in the air above, disaster strikes for the Tarians as they completely lose the initiative. One of their thunderbolts screams ahead, the Reaver stalls, throws the plane around, gets onto its aft, and plugs it full of shells. SRM, 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 and AC-20 plug it full of so many holes that the thing is barely flying. It loses several altitudes and almost crashes. And can you name this aerospace fighter? It's the one that's kicking ass right now. That's right, it's the Reaver. I really like the platform. Makes a really great strike craft. It can shrug off almost anything, but it is a heavy attack fighter. And right now, it's taking on 2 smaller tactical fighters. It's the beginning of turn 3, and things are looking great for the Word of Blake as we have stunted the clan advance, and they are trying to look for a different avenue to go. But the Coalition forces turned around and decided to take a look at the tactical situation, and they came up with a plan. We move all of our heavier units up, doubling down into the city and into the woods on the northern middle side of the board, and they start pressing their high-speed difference and turning around and redoubling onto the south, because our light assets are completely cut off. Having moved earlier in the initiative step, moving all of our assault and heavier assets, the slower assets, up there on the northern end, or at least northern middle, and they're cut off. We cannot support the southern units. We have pressed too far, too fast, and they start redoubling in kind, moving the Mad Cat aggressively south to try to make its presence felt as the Blood Asp tries to hold its rear. But we do what we can. Raven moves around, tries to take advantage of the rear arc. Cicada starts doing its dance, trying to get its movement mod, but moving as fast as it can so that it can also help put down that Mad Cat. And for the most part, the Word of Blake now just needs to buy time. All the assault units have been cut off as we left one sliver of hexes in between the woods and the buildings, allowing them to immediately turn around, avoid the minefields, and completely avoid any of our ability to put them down. The long-range LRM fire so far has done absolutely diddly. The LRMs haven't really stopped them, and the Ryukin bursts through our lines into the center and is now poised to make a mess of the Jägermech and the 2 bushwhackers. We are completely exposed for that as the Vulture pulls in behind them to make his absolutely deadly array of weapons an incredible threat to our deteriorating situation. And just like that, the initiative track and just a little bit of planning caused an entire faux pas in the tactical situation for the Word of Blake. Shots start to get deadly this turn as we begin ripping open the back of the Mad Cat. Can't quite put it down. Locust begins putting a whole lot of damage in the Raven, as well as the Raven generally dodging everything else in the kitchen sink that's being thrown at it. Long distance LRM fire indirect is proving completely useless, as we have all those units are now moving, running as fast as they can, and the mods are just insane at this point. So the poor light assets are completely cut off, and there's not a whole lot of shots we can actually do to make any kind of difference. The bushwhackers give it their all, manage to not do much damage really to speak of. Ryukin opens up on the bushwhacker, manages to also hit it with just about everything, but doesn't manage to do any damage, gets a through armor critical, goes straight to the ammo, blowing the bushwhacker to absolute pieces. Oh, that's going to hurt. Now, some of you astute out there might say, well, he's got case, he should be fine. Yeah, well, yeah, he's also got 3 XL engine slots. And we're using force withdrawal, so he's going to immediately eject anyway. But we do what we can, taking the shots that we can at range. It's mostly ineffectual. Mad Cat falls down under the fire that he's received, manages to take a pilot hit. Raven kicks him. Bushwhacker falls over as well under the fusillade of fire that's coming off the Blood Asp, the Toro, and all the other mechs out there that could otherwise see him. And there we are at the end of turn 3. Stunning move by Coalition forces, cuts off the support elements, leaving the light assets to deal with the Coalitions by themselves, and loses a mech in the process. And in the skies above, disaster, because we lost initiative. Reaver dives and pulls into his quarry as the other Thunderbolt races off the field with its damaged engine, but his buddy, his wingman, decides to go ahead and do what he can, throttles up and spins around as hard as he can to take another shot at the Reaver, but he manages not to do any kind of significant damage. Pedal to the metal, we are reeling from this turn of events, and we decide to go ahead and double down to get as much stuff as we can back over there as would be prudent. Stalkers move forward, but they're still so slow. They're going to take forever to get there. So we keep sinking whatever we can. We have more units, so we end up moving the infantry first, the stalkers first, and all the slow movers. The ones that, all the movement's not really going to matter. Bushwhacker gets up in the center, starts backpedaling to get away, and it starts the brouhaha that will happen in the center as the Mad Cat, again feeling his blood name, begins moving forward into the back arc of the Bushwhacker, and the other supporting elements from the Coalition starts moving in there as well. While Rorvik's Raider's assassin is out there in the middle of the woods, he's trying to come closer, I guess. Rorvik Raider Cicada, however, is way more ballsy, trying to get up there right behind the Mad Cat as we begin funneling in everything we can into that little section by the woods down there, and it's turning into a mess as mech after mech starts moving in as the Blood Asp and Toro start taking up a defilade, or at least a hull down position right on the hillside and taking shots at whatever they can, and the Coalition forces start biding their time. They try carefully thinking out where they're going to move next. And they go all in, dishing in the Ryokan again at close range, allowing the Vulture to hold the center and make that center a complete mess of mechs. All of them within 1 hex of each other in a brutal engagement that will determine the tempo of the rest of the game. If they can survive this round, this gives the Word of Blake a fighting chance. If they die this round, we might as well just throw in the towel. And at this range, as you can guess, it is incredibly messy. Shots ring into every mech. PSRs abound everywhere, as every one of the mechs down there has some sort of armor that gets blown open in one manner or another. But it is completely bittersweet, as all the shots that we wish to come close, all the big hitters, manage to whiff. And there's a lot of moaning about completely missed shots. It has been a tempo of this game that everything seems, or at least feels like it's missing. We got a lot of cross-eyed pilots out there. But the results speak for themselves. Everything is getting pretty dinged up out down there in the center. Even the rifleman decides to get in on the action, going full whole hog with its racks, doing 6 rounds on a 10+. I questioned my buddy Mark on the logic of that one, because that was real dicey, because he, I think, if I recall correctly, rolled a 5 on one of those. Yeah. Gotta be a little bit more careful. And despite the tempo, despite everything looking like that would have been this awesome Rock'em Sock'em Robots moments, almost nothing happens in the center. Kicks are missed. Shots don't ring home. And in the word of Blake, buys itself one more turn as the assault mechs are moving in as fast as they can. But will they get there in time? Or do we care? Meanwhile, in the air above, the Reaver pulls in on its opposition, losing the initiative again. Can't quite make it come home as the faster maneuvering tactical fighter has the initiative, swings behind him, and just thankfully, out of arc this turn. We are jinking, diving, and moving as fast as we can to try to buy the word of Blake one more time. Just a little bit more time for the Reaver to win the initiative and be able to turn the tide against him. It's the beginning of turn 5, and we bought just a little bit of time for the word of Blake, but it turns out the store was closing early, or at least they changed their hours, or at least it feels like they changed their hours, and we had to call the game in sooner than later. And the coalition forces continue to get aggressive, pressing the wounds where they can. They realize they need to keep getting aggressive and keep moving forward. We try to save as much as we can, hoard around them, slow them down, and just overwhelm them in individual superiority. Cicada, which is actually a Jenner, jumps into the air, crashes through the heavy trees, fails his PSR, falls into the woods, and damages the pilot, falling unconscious. And the Locusts stream in to take care of that one. The Tarians aren't going to let that go. And suddenly, as if it wasn't the last turn being necessary enough to get crazy with the guns, we go into the fire phase and everyone goes nuts with their hit rolls. We can't really explain the phenomenon, but every shot starts ringing home. And as the coalition forces are now spread well into the Word of Blake lines, the Word of Blake singles out that Ryokan, managing to leave him cut off from the rest of the forces, and we just start reenacting a particular scene from RoboCop as Lieutenant Peter Weller there starts getting shot from every direction, and every shot manages to hit a different location. Round after round blows off limb after limb after limb, crit after crit after crit, until we eventually completely core out the Ryokan. But it takes a devastating amount of time to do it. I'm glad we had that kind of forces to actually put down, but it finally was destroyed after we had to hit it with virtually a lance and a half worth of stuff. Tarians can't seem to make do on killing the Cicada foe Jenner. Rifleman manages to tag a couple damage into the Jaeger mech, manages to do just enough damage to cause a PSR. Mad Cat rips up some other targets. Rifleman takes it on the nose as a result, falls over, loses a consciousness point for it. Supporting fire from the Toro and the Bloodass managed to clear into the back of the remaining Bushwhacker, completely coring it out and destroying it. We go into PSR for the Jaeger mech. Jaeger mech fails the PSR, falls over on its back, through armor critical in the center. Boom! Goes the AC ammo. Oh my gosh. And that was it. It was clear we had a winner. Time notwithstanding, we had already lost a lot of stuff in one defiant push by the coalition at a well-timed moment after we had lost the tactical initiative and we were too busy trying to repair the position. They simply outmaneuvered us. And the same thing happened in the air war. I dove and tried to get off the map to be as cheesy as possible, but I couldn't quite make it. He swung in, tagged again with the AC-20, and went right through and cored out the center. It was a good game and a good match, and they flatly took a look at the tactical situation, and they made the right call. They changed their plan when it was necessary, and they simply outmaneuvered us. And that was an Ouchies Batrep. Thanks for watching.
Methinks that my bushwhacker isn't going to make it to the end of the turn.
Well, you've been laying down this terrain.
Take another white card out.
Dies on principle.
Yeah, dies on principle.